on Tuesday. What is it? Why do you want that? No, I get my job with all the trying to copy. I hope I can get like a free wash. Thank you. I will.
Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. I am currently in Ireland on a knitting tour. So I'm joining a group tour with other people to go around and see different parts of Ireland with bits of knitting focus here or there. So I decided that I'm going to show off the yarn that I got in Ireland. So I'm probably going to just do them all in one video because, as I heard from the tour guide earlier today, there isn't necessarily a yarn shop in Ireland. It's more, there's a yarn section in bigger shops in Ireland, or shops that have other things. I don't expect there to be as many yarn shops as I may have thought there were going to be. I'm still going to buy yarn, I'm still going to show it off and try to get things that are a little bit unusual. So I actually stopped by the first yarn shop today. Actually, it was not a yarn shop, it was a yarn section inside the shop. So they have this store called Anthony Ryan's. This is a bag from it. And Anthony Ryan's is a home store. It feels like walking into a Bed Bath & Beyond. But unlike Bed Bath & Beyond, they're still in business. And there's a lot of ceramics and a lot of home decor stuff. Like literally as I was leaving the store with a couple other people with me on the tour, I heard like some pottery shatter and it was like, thank goodness that was not us. They have this little yarn section and most of the yarn came from the same brand. And that brand was King Cole, which I remember seeing King Cole in magazines, but I haven't actually seen it in the States. So I got some here. I remember asking the person at, like the cashier at Anthony Ryan's, if King Cole was a brand that was specific to their store or if it was like just another brand that they bought to sell there. And it turns out King Cole is actually a British brand, but they can't sell it online. Like they don't have an online store. You can only buy King Cole by going to a store and buying it from the store. So this was probably my first chance to get King Cole yarn, which means a lot of it is King Cole yarn. I would say the overwhelming majority of the yarn I have is from there. So got this Tropical Beaches one. I just liked the colorway. This is a 70% premium acrylic, 30% polyamide. So it's got that nice soft feel that I like. It looks like it's a fingering weight yarn. So it's going to be pretty thin. It's going to take a little bit of time to work this up. And I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but that's what we'll figure it out, yeah? This is another King Cole. This is a Safari chunky yarn, and again, I like the colorway. I liked how thick it was. It's a little bit rougher to texture, but I saw this, I thought frog. Although I don't know how much I'm going to be making frogs at this point. I'm still going to be making more frogs, but I was making frogs earlier today. Also, as I'm starting filming this, in case it's not really obvious, I'm really tired at the moment. It's probably going to change throughout the course of the video as I get a little bit more rest. But I did just come off the plane into Ireland today. And I've been awake since 9 o'clock this morning, New York time. So I don't know how that converts to an Ireland time. I know that's like a 5-hour difference, but I have to do the math. When I figure out the math, I'll insert a clip here. Editing Becky here. By that point in the video, I had been in some method of alertness for 26 hours and 40 minutes would be my best guess. It's still largely estimation at this point, but past Becky underestimated how much future Becky would want to do that math. King Cole also has like this Cherish yarn. I don't know if you can tell. I think the sunlight's shining it out maybe. But it's got this weird texture. I don't know how to explain it other than that it's not like a typical yarn. It's wound. It's like spun in a way that makes it look kind of bumpy and soft at the same time. I like this colorway. I'll use this colorway on something. This is a 93% acrylic, 7% PBT. I don't know what PBT is. This looks like a sock yarn, but this was called Pineapple. You can see here, it is a clear pineapple color, yeah. It's fingering away. Also, that weird texture, but it feels so good. I got this Ford yarn. It says Fair Isle Effect Self-Patterning Yarn. I'm not sure how it's going to pull that off. It sounds like this is a pulling yarn. It's 100% anti-pilling acrylic. We stand an anti-pilling acrylic. It feels nice and soft. I mean, Fair Isle Effect usually has a little bit more effort than just a variegated yarn. Yeah, that usually requires a lot of color work. So I'm interested if this pulls in any coherent way, or if the tag says something about that. But even if I don't end up experimenting with that, this feels like a yarn I'd love the texture to do. Sorry, we were just getting paper bag ASMR today. That's just where I'm at right now. The last King Cole yarn that I got was this tinsel yarn. This is like that eyelash yarn. I don't really see much like this at home. Polyester, like 75% polyester, 25% Lurex. This is something that I would want to figure out how to knit, even though it'd be nice to crochet a Christmas tree. I don't think I would have the patience to crochet with this. I would have more patience to knit with it. Just figuring out how to knit a cone. I think I can do that. And this last one is the only, well, there were only 2 other brands there that were not King Cole. One was Sidar, and I did not get any Sidar yarn, even though I love the feel of Sidar yarn, because I see that in the States. And I do kind of want to focus this trip on getting yarn that I did not see in like the New Jersey Wool Walk, or that I do not see in the States. Because what's the point of traveling to new places if you're just going to do the same thing, yeah? But the other one was this Atlantic Coast yarn. It says it's spun in Ireland. And it says it's a Donegal yarn, the genuine Donegal. It says that it's spun in Ireland. It's like, well, yeah, if it's spun in Ireland, let's get the Irish yarn. And this was a vibrant color that just called out to me. I don't know why I've been picking more yellow yarns lately. Something's going on there. I'm not typically a yellow person. I'm more like a green, purple, blue, maybe orange person. Oh, I also got a zipper. I've been thinking about getting a zipper for a pattern that I'm actually designing right now. And this is the perfect color, and this is the perfect length. So I just got it. Save myself a trip, yeah? Even though I would probably not be keeping the project that has the zipper in it. That is what I got from Anthony Ryan's. I had to look at the bag to remember the name. And I'm going to have to repackage this yarn to make it easier to travel with. But I brought an extra bag to do that. I came prepared. That is the yarn from the first store that I got yarn from.
No, you're not in there at all.
The second place where I found yarn today was actually in the folk park that is attached to Bunratty Castle. This shop is a woolen shop. I forget the name off the top of my head, but knowing me, I probably edited that little bit right before I started talking. So that's the title of that shop. And they were not really a yarn shop per se. They were mostly finished woolen products. So they had lots of scarves and hats. Some of it was knitted, but a lot of it was woven. And there were lots of plaid designs, and that stuff was soft. It was soft. And they also had like the typical I visited Ireland trinkets, like hand things that were made in Ireland, but they had the shamrock plastered all over it. It's like, I don't really need any of that type of stuff, you know? Like, I feel like I'm at a point where if I want to bring something into my life, I want it to kind of like help me in some way, either by teaching me information or being like a material that I could use, yeah? They only had 2 types of yarn. I got 1 of each type. That's a pretty good cost. Honestly, like one was like 15 euros and the other was 16 euros, and which would be the typical amount that you would pretty much pay for an artisan skein. Like in the States, it would be like 20 bucks. They both came from the same place. They both came from Kerry Woolen Mills. So I ended up asking the cashier there if Kerry Woolen Mills was close to Bunratty Castle. She's like, no, it's an hour and a half away. And she seemed kind of apologetic about it, but honestly, that didn't really bother me because I know I'm on this trip with this tour, and that was the only time I was going to come by that way. Then she also gave me a paper giving more information about the actual wool mill itself. Actually, by Bunratty Castle, there was like the Blarney wool mills. I didn't have time to stop by. If I was traveling by myself and I did this, I would have made time to stop by the mills. But hey, I mean, it's a group tour, right? You gotta follow the group. That's the whole point. They take care of the arrangements for you. So the first type that I saw, this was actually outside. Like, this just stood out in the sunlight. For me, it's like green, but there's flecks of blue and yellow all in it. And it's a rough yarn, don't get me wrong. This is not the, oh my gosh, I love the feel of this. But this is 100% wool. I mean, it's made in Ireland. We're here in Ireland for the wool, yeah. We're here in Ireland for, like, the fiber. I feel like I could probably make something interesting with this. Don't know what yet, but we'll see. And then I got another green yarn. This is superwash merino wool. So the fact that this feels a lot softer, probably because it has merino in it, yeah. But this, it's a mint green. It's literally my favorite color. So I'll find something to use with this. And honestly, I feel like I got a lot of yarn here. There's 660 yards approximately. That's a lot. That's a lot. I'm like thrilled that I found yarn there because it wasn't a yarn trip. Like, the Bunratty Castle was an optional part of the tour that most of the tour ended up going for. Since I was also told that yarn would be part of other stores, it wouldn't necessarily be like just a yarn store in Ireland. I've kind of been a little bit more on the lookout. But yeah, that was a nice little shop.
Essays in it as well. One from the curator of the exhibition that we invited to pull the exhibition together, and the other essay is from a lady who's in the Brooklyn Lace Guild. And she's a very...
Later on the second day in Ireland, we had a talk at the hotel, and the talk was by the lace makers. So there's this volunteer project. It's called the Hertford Lace Project. Their mission is kind of twofold. Irish lace used to be made in Hertford, but with the Hertford Lace Project, so they found out in this town of Hertford in Galway County that they used to have this huge tradition of making lace. It needs to be a huge part of what the woman in that town did. And these two ladies, Esther and Juliana, they both had lived in Hertford for years, and then they found out years after living this, like towards the start, like 2016 I think was when they found out, that there was a tradition of lace and they hadn't known about it, and the locals of the town didn't know about it. And it's like, we're losing a part of our cultural history here. Let's try to bring it back. So they do a lot of research. They find like in all the historical documents about the town, they actually try to find who made the lace, who bought lace, what type of lace was made, things like that. They also teach about making lace. They found only one surviving piece of Hertford lace, and it was like in a castle from 1904. As it survived a fire from 1906, I think. And they actually made a replica of that lace. Someone figured out how to make it. And then they started teaching like other different lace making stitches, because any other type of craft, if you don't make it, people forget about it, yeah? Third part is more of a community outreach thing. It's, I think they call it like reinterpreting or something like that, where they figure out how to make it more visible in the town itself that this was a place that made lace, and that lace is a huge part of their history. They have a huge arts installation of like a heart in one of the city areas that was made, and it's actually like a lace heart, but it's made with paracord, I think it is. And they also had like a museum exhibit kind of throughout the streets during the pandemic itself. They have a book about it, which I bought the book for the exhibition. It's great that they're doing all this stuff. They're trying to bring it back, and they have revived it in Hertford. So they had two different tables. So they had what they called like a little fundraising table, and then they had an archive table. So the things on the archive table were not for sale. The little clip that I showed before I started talking, that were the things that were on the archive table. The fundraising table had like pieces of lace that were made. They also had some crochet knitting, which I'm not really buying as much made work nowadays because I'm making work. I also got a chance to try it myself. They did a demonstration on how to do it. So I'm going to make sure I write down the instructions for what I was told was the linen stitch before I go to bed tonight so I don't forget. Also selling the lace. Well, they were selling finished lace, but they're also selling the thread for the lace. So this is cotton mercurial lace. It's super thin. The only time I would consider really knitting or crocheting with this type of yarn, like, this is the type of yarn that people make doilies with. I don't think it's really yarn. I think this is now just thread. Honestly, it is so thin. It is the thread that is used to make lace. And like, I could knit with it, but this would be like the type of thing that you would use. You wanted your doll to knit, and then gave her own set of knitting needles, and you made her a little piece of knitting, so that way your doll was already in a project. Couldn't help but think, like, the actual process of lace making whilst doing this. It's like, this would be an amazing fidget gadget. Like, it's not necessarily a toy, but this would be an amazing fidget tool for people who get comfort from those things, like with sensory disorders or ADHD, things like that. Because the process, the same motions that you use to make the lace are very, like, it's weaving, and it's a very similar way of fidgeting that you might do if you did like a Rubik's Cube, or you can either like pop a bubble, or it's a little bit more engaged in a bubble popper, but like, I couldn't help but think, like, this is a fidget gadget, you know? I was not expecting to care about lace that much, but now I'm at the point where it's like, yeah, I can give this a go. Since I've had this talk, it's like now I've got the bar lowered from this is intimidating to this is something I could do. Which is always nice when something like that happens, you know?
But I do have a little Instagram, and I just share.
So the next store I'm going to talk about is the Connemara Sheep and Wool Center. So it's basically like a museum gift shop type of thing. Like, half of it is an exhibit where they take you around and they show you like the spinning wheels and the looms and whatnot. And then they actually let you try it, which is amazing. It's actually like a little bit more of an active museum than most museums. You have a spinning wheel where you can't even touch it, but you've got someone who's knowledgeable on how to do this stuff to show you how to do it. The other half is a gift store where you can get all sorts of like Irish handcrafts and Irish-based things to get souvenirs to bring home to people if that's something that you want to do. And they had a very small yarn section. It's just like a little bookshelf area. And they had a couple different types of yarn, so I essentially chose one of each type of yarn that they had. There's only like 5 types of yarn. First, I ended up getting like 2 of the same type of yarn, but they're different colors. This is Studio Donegal Aran yarn. It's 100% new wool. It's spun by Donegal Yarns. This was not spun at the Sheep and Wool Center. The Sheep and Wool Center is located in Connemara, Galway. And Galway is farther south in Ireland than Donegal. I'm not going to make it to Donegal this trip, so I have no problem buying this. Fun fact, my family that immigrated over to Ireland, they came from the region of Donegal. I could be buying yarn that's made by a distant relative, who knows? My grandfather, before he immigrated over, was a shepherd, and they had like a weaving business, I believe. They actually wove some blankets in their house. That was not something he was able to teach me before he died, because I was only 8 when he died, and also he wasn't doing that then. These colors are pretty cool. The yarn is a little bit rough. I mean, 1, it's tweed, and also 2, it's Aran wool. Aran wool is unfortunately a little bit rough, but you can find something to make with it, honestly. There was this yarn right here. It's the same company, but they made it in a hank instead of a skein as they did there. This is merino wool. This is why this is like this. So it's from Kildare County, Kilcar County, Donegal. Also, some of the stuff in here is in Irish. So Irish is an official language of Ireland, and they actually have Irish on all the road signs. It's actually above English on the road signs. And some of these places are, like, especially when you start going to Connemara, some of these places are in like Gaelic speaking areas where you try to speak only Gaelic. But actually, it's not called Gaelic. That's what you call it in Scotland. Basically, you only speak the Irish language. I've been seeing a lot more of that writing around here. But yeah, it was just like a nice yarn. It looks more vibrant on the screen than it actually is in real life. It was pretty cool. And then I realized that this is still spun by the same company, but it had a different label, so I thought it was something else. But this is 100% Irish wool. It's hand selected from Irish farms. So I'm definitely leaving with a little bit of Ireland with me, yeah. And it's more like this yellowish beige color. The sun's bleaching it out, unfortunately. Another little hank. Be good for like practicing dummy stuff, you know. Or like if I need like a beige-ish sort of color. This here is a mohair yarn. I wasn't too much impressed with the skein, but they were selling kits. And they actually had a tea kettle cozy over it, made with this yarn. I got to touch how it was on the tea kettle cozy, and the yarn was so much softer when it was worked up versus when it was in the skein. It's like, ooh, I love this yarn. So they had a pattern for a snood. I don't know what a snood is. I have my suspicions of what it might be, and this could have been something that I googled, but I didn't. I'm gonna find out this way. So I'm gonna have to see what a snood is. It's a crochet pattern because there's a crochet hook in there. Even though this is the type of yarn that I typically would not crochet because of like all the, you can kind of see this like the little loops that are going on like that. I would usually get concerned about like stuff getting caught in the loops, you know, if I was crocheting, especially since you're purposely going for loops. It's a pretty thick hook that's in there though. Yeah, 70% mohair, 30% wool. I also love the color, so I'm pretty excited for that. And then the last yarn that I got from here was this purple yarn, which was stunning. It's a lot of yarn. The weird thing about this was there was no label. It was just like this. All I had was the price tag stuck on the bookshelf that these skeins were on. There is more in here than there are in the other skeins that I got. When I asked at the cash register, they said that this was 100% Aran wool, which it feels like it, quite honestly. But I like how, I feel like the camera's picking this up pretty well. I like how it's pretty speckled. I feel like that could make something interesting. That was my haul from the Connemara Sheep and Wool Center. In all honesty, that was, if you want a place to get souvenirs for people that you're traveling, that is a good place to get them. Even though I would suggest that they start offering drop spindles. I could have just missed it, but I don't think I did. I didn't see any drop spindles there, and that is a place I feel like they would sell like hotcakes, especially since they have a whole like spinning wheel deal going on there. But that's okay. I can probably find one somewhere else, or I could possibly even make one if I'm being quite honest. Yeah, that was a delightful place. This next one is a little bit of a surprise to me. We went to like a glass factory and a glass store, but they didn't sell just glass. A huge percentage of it was glass, but they also sold jewelry and they sold ceramics and they sold all sorts of things and some clothing, but they sold yarn. And it was like, I'm really surprised that that's here. I can't believe I can just buy yarn here. So I bought the yarn. There were only two types of yarn. They're both a type of wool, but they did seem like brands I hadn't seen yet. This here is from Aran Crafts. Yeah. Like a nice minty green turquoisey type of color. It's speckled. It is a little bit rough. I'm pretty sure this is 100% wool. Yeah, 100% pure Nur wool. And there's like speckles of pink in it. There's a darker blue. There's some green. It's just like the, out of the colors that were there, this was the fun color. And then they had a softer yarn. This is from Tivoli. It's a tweed Aran. So it's blue. It has like, tweed kind of means it has like these brown speckles in it. So this is 25% wool and 70% acrylic, which is why it feels a lot softer to me. But this was like only €6, which is a pretty good price for a yarn, quite honestly. Just the two skeins there. Even though there wasn't a lot of yarn there, I'm surprised there was yarn at all. I didn't end up buying any glass because I didn't feel like carrying it, although I did find out after the fact that if you do buy glass from the Celtic Crystal company, they will ship it to your house for you, so you don't have to worry about bringing it on the airplane, which honestly, if you're going to drop a couple $100 on a piece of glassware, you want to make sure it survives through the flight. Yeah. Yeah, it was a nice happy surprise that the glass store had yarn. Yeah. I can't believe I found yarn today, but I did. We ended up stopping at Adair on the way to Killarney in order to just have like a bathroom break. It was a pretty chill place. There was only 2 types of yarn, so I got one of each type. The people there were pretty chill about letting me eat ice cream in there because I got the ice cream first because it was a beautiful afternoon. The person there was very chatty and like, because someone else had bought in yarn and she's like, oh, are you guys knitters? And I mentioned we were on a knitting tour and whatnot, and she has relatives who knit, and it was a very friendly chat. So I got 2 different types of yarn. Like, I was standing by someone else from the tour and she was like, this is the same color as your hair. You need to get this. And it's like, okay. So I did. It's from Kerry Woolen Mills, which honestly is the same brand of yarn, the same type of yarn that I've gotten from Folk Park earlier, but the colors that were there were different from the colors in the Folk Park. The Folk Park did not have this light purple. I'll find a use for it. It's not too much different. And then they had this kit. It's a kit for a beanie hat, which I got like 5mm bamboo needles along with it, but this is Atlantic Coast yarn, spun in Ireland. Again, it's Aran yarn, 100% wool. They didn't sell this yarn not in a kit. So the only yarn that was separate from a kit was this type of yarn, but this yarn was only in a kit. So I got it. I honestly don't know if I feel like making the beanie or not. I might use the yarn for something else. But I always appreciated a good set of bamboo knitting needles. That was Adair Woolen, which we only visited because we needed a bathroom break. It's a very cute little shop. In the town of Dingle, I ended up hitting 2 stores that had yarn. I went to 3 stores looking for yarn, and I found yarn in 2 stores. First store where we found yarn was Cumundum. I'm gonna put it right down here just so you'll be able to see it because I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. It's like the type of word that my mind is gonna drop a syllable or replace a syllable, something like that. And it was like a lot of Aran wool. Like with this store, it wasn't so much the type of yarn that's been unusual, it was the way that it was sold. And I made a very impulsive decision at this store. It's a problem for future Becky. It's a problem for Airport Becky. Airport Becky is happy to do this for even more future Becky, you know? So it's pretty much all wool. It was pretty much all wool here. But on a cooler effect, they had a little bin, like a little basket, and they just had yarn balls inside the basket, unmarked, just wrapped up. And it turns out the way that they sold these yarn balls was they weighed them for you, and every 500 grams was €4. So I ended up getting like €12 worth of yarn. It was like 165 grams, and the person waiting on me, I think her name was Joan, she's like, we'll just knock it down to 150 for the price. It seemed like they were like, okay, you hit that amount, we're going to charge you a certain amount. So I took most of the vibrant colors that were left. I left a couple blues and greens in there, but like all the other vibrant colors I took. So it's pretty much just a monochrome shade right now. So we have like this nice vibrant purple. We've got like this green that's going on. Oh, I got even more of the purple. It's like the same. They had this red, and they had some of this orange, and they had this pink. They had this blue and this green. So I'm very happy with that. For these, I'm thinking scrap snake. So this is going to sound counterintuitive, but last month I was working on cutting down my stash. So of course I'm buying more yarn, right? But part of how I was cutting down on some of the yarn that was there was I started a spool knitting project that I'm calling a scrap snake, to kind of just take out the scraps that were too small, which honestly this is like the perfect size for the scrap snake, like all my yarns that were like this size, and I'm gonna turn them into a rug. So that way I've kind of got like a Joseph's coat of many colors but in rug form. And I think it'll be a pretty cool project. What I'm doing is, when I was clearing out my stash, I was like counting like 10 scraps equals 1 skein. And honestly, I might end up being a little bit over, but like I still have a lot. I kind of cleared out the scraps at this point. I'm using this to like finish things up, but honestly, I do think that this was a very clever marketing technique because obviously it worked on me. And like, especially if you're like me and you're thinking, oh, I want to take as much different types of yarn as I can on the airplane, this is a great way to do it. Which was not the me of 5 minutes later. Me of 5 minutes later got this. They were selling yarn in cone form. This baby's heavy. This is like a turquoisey type of color. I was about to get a light green. Kind of like a Kermity green. The way that this yarn is wound and how much of it is there, it's like... And Joan ended up telling me that this is how she gets her yarn. Is like this. I could have asked them if they would have shipped it to me. I didn't. Because I wanted to show it off. It's like more of that, it's more Aran wool. And it's like, you know what? This will be good to see, like, what type, this will be good for, like, a big project. I know I'll have enough. I've been told that one of these is 10 of these. And this is like 200 grams. I get this too, by the way. I saw this color and it's like, ooh. Same type of yarn, though. You know, I could probably pair these together and they go very nicely. That's something to think about, huh? Yeah, I just saw this gold and like there was like another tourist from Canada, actually, not the same one that I ran into the bathroom later on in the day. But she's like, you know, that doesn't go with your hair. And I was like, I know. This was not cheap. This was 160 euros. This will be the biggest splurge of the trip. I'm thrilled with this. The other person I was with was considering buying this. But when she heard the price, she was like, oh, it's $2,000 for me. And it's like, you know what? I came here to buy yarn. I'm gonna get this. And then the last yarn I got from that store was this mohair. It's a nice vibrant brown. If there was another color, I probably would have gotten it. But I was showing off the yarn afterwards, and it was amazing how many people were drawn to this mohair. You know what? This could actually make a very nice sheep. Without a lot of effort, because it has like the bumps in it, you know? And it feels pretty nice. It's a very nice feel to it. That is what I got at Kumumdum. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. That was one of the most thrilling stores I've seen on this trip, like because of how they decided to advertise. It was a different way of marketing it, because most of them just have like hanks like this, and just to be able to get balls like this, I'm just absolutely thrilled with this idea. Oh my gosh. The second yarn store that I found in Dingle was Kerry Wool & Mills. Now, if Kerry Wool & Mills sounds familiar, it's because I've been showing off yarn from there. Like, you may remember me mentioning while talking about the yarn from the folk park that I was asking, where is Kerry Wool & Mills? And she's like, oh, they're about an hour or so from here. And I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the building that said Kerry Wool & Mills when we were driving into Dingle. It's like, wait, I'm gonna have a chance to actually see it. So I ended up finding my way in after I had the ice cream. I didn't know whether it would be actually worth it to go in or not, because I've been buying that type of yarn all over. It's like, what if it's just the same type of yarn? There was another part of me is like, what if they have a wider selection of yarn here? That was the part that made me end up going there. And it was a lot like these Wool & Mill stores. So a lot of the Wool & Mill stores actually sell more like completed projects, completed knitwear. And I'm not as interested in bringing home things that are already completed as things that I can make. For some reason, it's just not what I'm interested in buying. But there was yarn here. Most of the yarn was pretty much the same yarn that I've been finding in the other stores. It's basically been like a merino superwash and 100% Aran tweed. So I ended up getting some more of the merino superwash in this purple, which was stunning. There are other colors there, but it's like the purple was what won out. I mean, it actually matches my hair even closer than some of the other colors. It's like, yeah, I know I'll be able to use this purple in something. They did actually have a different type of yarn, so I had some cones of yarn around the store, like some cones in the window and some cones on a larger shelf. And they were different textures, but there wasn't like a display of cones so much. There was one cone in the window that I liked. I wasn't sure if I would be allowed to buy it after the Mr. Rogers knitting book from one of the stores on the Wool Walk in Jersey. I decided to get it from the window anyway, and the lady sold it to me. So this is the yarn. It's like a very thin yarn, kind of like the fingering weight, maybe even thinner than fingering weight, but it's like 3 and it's spliced together in different shades of purple. And it was just €4 for this, which amazing. Might be a layer of dust on here, might have been there for a while, but I don't care. Looks like it's like 80% wool and maybe 20% whatever PA is. Oh, this was made in 2015. I guess I was waiting for someone to love it. And here she is. I was very thrilled with this. What I'm finding out with like a lot of yarn that I'm getting here, it's overwhelmingly wool. If you like working with wool, Ireland is a great place to get yarn. But if you don't like working with wool, you're not going to find much else. The cashier at Kerry Mills was actually very nice in answering my questions, because I was asking like, hey, like, is the yarn made near here? And she said it was actually made about an hour away in Clarny. And there's only about 2 working mills left in Ireland, and they're one of them. And they've been running for hundreds of years. The current owners have had Kerry Woolen Mills in their family for like 110 years. That's just amazing. I'm very glad that I went to Kerry Woolen Mills. It's like a nice way to kind of pull all the other like yarn purchases together, you know. I'm realizing at this point that I might have more than enough footage to split it into 2 videos, so if that's the case, you're going to see this clip. So there'll be another part, and I'll see you in the next one.